All right, recording's rolling. Welcome everyone to the October 3rd Cloud Custodian Community Meeting. We can get right into the details. We're just seeing some activity in Slack about the new release. 0.9.32 is out. And for this release cycle, just the past month, we had 8 new contributors. Kapil, you mentioned that's a record, or maybe a record, suspected record.
Suspected record for like effectively 30 days. Yes.
30 days. That's but it's exciting. Record or no, that's good stuff. Get new people in.
And Jameson followed up. Are they all from different companies? And I think there's 7 new companies represented in that.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that's a good thing. I think maybe along the same lines as some of the new contributors, I think we are seeing some new people using the tool, because I don't know if you all have noticed, but I think between Slack and GitHub issues, we're getting some questions around like getting started docs and things like that, like early, what look like new user policy questions, which is a good thing. I mean, it keeps us, I know we've always got changes going into the product. We run some tests against the docs, but it's always good to have new eyes on those things to make sure that as we're adding features and tweaking things, that we don't break the like the on-ramp for people. So that's pretty cool. It's good to see. Anything else noteworthy worth highlighting from the release you can think of, Kapil?
Look at the release notes again, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, just from that, I mean, the process. I know we were talking about some of the checklist type stuff, things catching.
I mean, so there was a bunch of shift left PRs. There was quite a few GCP PRs. On the AWS side, we added inspector support, which is actually super cool, because now custodian policies can do like, hey, you've got a CV installed on package on your instance type of thing, which I think is kind of cool. And on the AWS CC side, we're now like, that gives us fairly full coverage across AWS, and we've now made that not actually having to version those data files in our repo. We just do it at build and package time. And on the GCP side, we've expanded support for IAM policy filters through multiple resources, including the significantly that went in late, organization and filters. And on the shift left side, just a lot of just cleanup. We added GitLab output and JUnit output, and also a new dump command, so you can see the graph that you're actually evaluating. So those would be sort of the highlights, I would call it.
That sounds good. I know right under the gun before the release happened, we had all these Eurolib 3 and that was because of a CVE that was filed upstream, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dependabot is sort of our early warning system when we don't actually use the Dependabot PRs, but it is good to get the PRs filed, just so that we know when we have them, because we try to be fairly proactive about any CVEs in our dependency ecosystem, and this is a tool that helps us do that.
Sounds good. All right, thanks. So yeah, that's all release-related stuff. Also, I know just based on PyPI stats, it looked like there were we're still seeing a lot of activity for the Python 3.7 versions, the last custodian versions that supported 3.7, which I think was 09.29 maybe. But I guess that's just the only point would be if anyone out there or anyone watching this is trying to upgrade custodian and not seeing the latest releases, then it's worth checking your Python version, because we're 3.8 and above as of the last couple of releases have been that way. So if you're on 3.7 or earlier, you're not going to be catching the latest custodian releases.
And that's just per what upstream Python actually currently supports.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mentioned before also just some of the new contributor activity, new user activity. We do have a couple documentation PRs in here. One, I think, didn't occur to me until somebody filed an issue, but we didn't have the list item filter that was, I think that was added last year. It was under the AWS common filters. We're just surfacing that, trying to highlight it a little bit more under as a generic filter, just so it's a little easier for folks to find. I think if we get a question asking about a filter that already exists, and it's someone who's clearly looked at the docs, it makes sense to try to highlight these things. And similarly down here, just trying to clean up some documentation examples. So if anyone in here or again watching a recording, if you see anything in the docs that could be fleshed out a little more, clarified, made simpler, anything like that, documentation PRs are pretty awesome. Oh, okay. So new release, Cloud Custodian Day. I don't have anything to add on that. Kapil or anyone else, you have anything?
It got put. I think we're pushing it till end of January.
Okay.
I was asking. We're going to try to push extend the call for papers on that as well, because clearly, like, just more time makes more sense, and the fall is pretty busy with a couple conferences, so we're going to open up in the new year. I think we're looking at the January 24th, but hopefully people will be back from vacations and kids in school and all that. So look for an update on that soon in the channels.
All right, thanks. Okay, I think those are the top level items. So then we're into reviewing PRs and issues. But before we get there, does anybody else have questions or comments? Anything you want to talk about?
I had a question about one of the PRs, or I think it was a change in 9.30, and then we kind of have like a cleanup PR for 9.31. Actually, I think it's in this release, regarding the WAF and VPC, like WAF enabled, set to true, VPC. So like for that one, it looks like we kind of cleaned up the verbosity a little bit of some of the warning logs for the deprecation of like certain filters. So that'll be good. 'Cause we did see, we actually kind of just recently noticed like, oh crap, these things are deprecated now. There's just more, just kind of a, yeah.
Oh, wait, is that this thing? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So basically, are we, so this I believe was like a dedicated filter before. Are we changing it to value filters? I haven't really dug into like what the why we decided to deprecate this or how we can
So before, this was effectively a membership test on like, does this thing have a WAF? Does this WAF have this resource? And so we extended it to support through like hey, does this WAF have this rule type of thing? So it allows for like deeper comparisons and like in addition to just membership. So it's inclusive of membership, but it allows it to do more things. And I think that was sort of the notion on like, why should we try to depreciate it? Because like currently we're compatible, and I think there's a separate question there, like, what does deprecation mean? When do I need to go fix it? And as a project, we haven't really well defined that. And that's kind of an open-ended question, like, and it's actually a great topic for a community meeting. Like, I would generally think we would want to give like 6 months to a year on deprecations, but
makes sense.
Yeah,
we just wanted to get a rough timeline of, we have a lot of policies that are using this filter, so we're going to need to migrate to I guess the new way of doing things. But yeah, we just kind of wanted to get just a rough ballpark estimate of timeline, like, oh, this thing isn't going to get phased out in the next few releases. We're talking a little bit further out, but obviously deprecation implies eventually this thing's going to go away. So yeah, it's 6 months to a year. Like that makes sense to me. We're gonna try to make these changes before then, and then obviously when we do that, it'll be called out in some PR or something, probably, right?
Yeah, we it's a good call as well as far as how do we announce. Like we've done a few release announcements with breaking changes in the release notes, but I don't know that that's really the right way to do it. Uh, yeah. So, I mean, let me rephrase it. What would you like to see?
I mean, I feel like the release notes is cool. We could have another, I don't know if there is a section where maybe it's called out near the top, like, hey, these are breaking changes that are moving from deprecated to no longer supported or something. But I feel like the release notes, that's where there's a lot of visibility on changes. So I feel like that's probably a good starting point. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll take that back to the team. We're looking for, at least for this change, we're looking 6 months at a minimum, probably.
Yeah, I think we've been using deprecation so far to say there is another way, and here's what that other way is. But yeah, I think it's a fair point that we haven't said, and this is when the old way isn't going to be supported anymore. So we don't really want to pull the rug out from anybody.
Yeah, I'd probably say, well, like maybe in the next release, we'll announce a deprecation policy in the release notes, and target it to whatever we decide. Maybe, I don't know, like how best to decide 6 months versus a year in this context, but potentially we put out a Slack survey, but the notion that there is an actual formal deprecation policy, and we go back and retrofit all the existing deprecations to start the clock ticking, and then require new ones to have a clock set, would be, I think, a reasonable goal. The flip side is, is 6 months enough time? I think probably, but curious from other folks in the call, like, what do you think is a reasonable deprecation policy? Should it be a year? Is 6 months okay?
Yeah, I think 6 months should be pretty good. David, you wanna?
Yeah, I mean, 6 months should be, I guess the question is, how are we letting folks know deprecations? That's the hard part.
So I would probably, I think, we currently generate our release notes. So the notion is, I think we would do is put into the release notes the deprecations and how much time is remaining for each one. So that way it's like, it was in the last, 5 months of release notes type of thing.
Right.
And then additionally, when we drop a message into Slack, we could, as far as the new release, we could also be highlighting what's coming up on the deprecated set. Although currently we just dropped the link to the release notes, and if it's already there, that might be redundant. But
right.
I think over communicating on deprecations is probably the right answer anyways, so that's okay. And beyond that, I'm not sure what else we can do.
I know that in the past we've seen some deprecations pop up in runs. I think, Pratish, remind me if I'm wrong on that. I'm possibly very wrong on that, but I thought we'd seen some messaging inside of like runs that would pop up if you're doing like a dry run and tell you, this is not going to be around, or this is being deprecated. Is that possible?
There
Yeah,
is.
I think
We do support dry run. Like, sorry to interrupt, Pratish, but there's two types of deprecations in this context. There's deprecations from Python, let's say, around various things like disutils. Like Python 3.12 just got released, and disutils is gone, and we still have some usage of that in Custodian. Some of the GCP libraries use deprecated things that are also potentially problematic. Those things are not policy deprecations. Those things
they're
are
not.
just
Yeah,
runtime
non-negotiable.
deprecations.
Yeah.
The policy deprecations do flag on validate. I don't know that we flag them on run or not. And there's a separate flag on validate to treat deprecations as failures instead of warnings. It's not the default. And those are sort of the two places that we try to service them right now.
That's
Yeah,
good.
I think
I didn't realize we could do that. That's helpful actually to have it.
the
as a
run logs
failure.
that you're talking about, David, that's on validation. I think the logs that we see on running custodian validate.
Okay, yeah, which happens on our check-ins and stuff. So I think that's helpful. I don't expect you guys to bang us over the head with it. I don't expect it to. We need to be paying attention. I'm just concerned about folks who aren't necessarily engaged with the community who get sideways, but they should be paying attention. And I mean, we have to play both sides of that. We need to balance that, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe like the release before we actually remove support, we turn those validate warnings into failures as another option, let's say. Currently, none of the existing deprecations in the code base have a date associated to them. The notion would be that in the place that we mark the deprecation, we also, we add the timestamp, let's say, on when they actually go from warning to fail. And then after that happens, we are able to remove them. And if we do that way, then theoretically, we have an ability to, unless it's required for refactoring, to, potentially do an allow deprecated flags, but that's going to be highly dependent on their code in question.
Yeah. I think just having that timestamp on there would be helpful because I know when we first started noticing stuff is deprecated, it was kind of okay, this is going away, and our take was, well, let's just take error as soon as possible so we don't get caught because we didn't know for sure. But having a date certain would be awesome.
Cool. And sort of just circling back on this specific deprecation. So was it replaced with value filters, or so I'm not seeing this filter obviously available anymore in like the docs. That's awesome. The docs are up to date with this one. But yeah, is this going to be just like a value type filter now, or do you guys know off the top of your head? Just looking for some quick pointers before we start digging into it.
I don't. Kapil, do you know offhand?
It's specifically on the WAF filter, I believe.
Yeah, and we're using list items, so that suggests that we have everything we need and we can do a list item filter. And
yeah, I'm trying to pull up the pull request where.
So, I'm sorry. I'm looking at ALB. So I do see that filter is still available. Sorry, I was looking at the WAF instead. I'm looking at, say, ALB, a resource that utilizes WAF. Oh, it looks like WAF enabled. I'm still seeing in the docs like WAF v2 enabled. It looks the same as it looked before. So I'm like, what's the new way of doing it then?
I think we supported both of them. Here, let me show you. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is the actual PR that sort of changed it out. I mean, it's probably in reference to this PR. In terms of looking at it, so before you weren't able to do any attribute checks. On a value filter, I still think you can do like a value count, perhaps. It's not really about list item because given resources only associated with one WAF.
So this kind of goes back to the higher level question about the deprecations. Like I think part of communicating it is having like a good alternative. Like even if we
like,
can't
here's
auto
the-
correct, but yeah,
Yeah,
we might
like,
need some good examples.
Totally. That would be my feedback is like, okay, this thing is deprecated, but there's not an easy.
How do you translate a policy from one to the other? That's fair.
So like
we need like an ability to like reference like a deprecation ID and associate documentation to the ID.
Yeah. And I would say before we start the clock ticking on however many months it's going to be, we should probably get something like that in place so people can start transitioning with,
Yep. I'm taking on it right now.
Yeah, that's a good note. I think when we started with this deprecation talk, there was some notion of having a migration or auto upgrade on for certain cases where that's possible. Like one of the ones that comes to mind is we used to allow a top level region key, and that kind of got moved into a condition block. And we said, well, that's pretty easy to change. We can take that if we see it. We could say, upgrade my policies, move this region key into a condition, and that's fine. For something more complex like a WAF filter, if that's not possible, then we at least need to have some kind of way to say, here's what the old way and the new way would look like, so you have somewhere to start digging. Because it sounds like, Steve, you don't really have a foothold to start digging or to start climbing.
Yeah. We're just curious kind of where to start. So do we keep that filter in there and change some things, or is this do we automatically query the WAF resources and now there's a value filter available? Basically, like how do we start, moving towards the new way of doing it? Yeah.
Cool. If you ask a question in a community meeting and no one has an obvious answer, that's a pretty good indicator that we need a documentation update. So thanks for bringing that up.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, guys. All right. So yeah, I guess we'll dig into this one and see if there is I guess an alternative. I mean, it seems like we wouldn't have deprecated it unless there was a viable alternative to do the same thing.
I mean, possibly. Okay. I think the notion of making sure that we document how to convert on deprecations and make sure that we don't get there, but like that there is an obvious path. But yeah, it's worthwhile to go through the exercise nonetheless. And if there isn't, then please do file an issue or raise it.
Okay. Yeah. We'll
like I said, 100%. We have not started the clock on any of this stuff. So.
Okay. Cool. For now, we're not going to worry too much about this. We'll circle back when we got some time and see, if there's another way, I guess, to do this. But at some point, we'll need to dig into that for sure. Cool, guys. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Anybody else have thoughts on deprecation or any other topics? Where other topics could be. I was going to say other topics could be issues or PRs. What do you have?
Yeah, I could go at the end if you want. But we had been working with AWS on an issue that was related to retrieving credentials from ECS task. It would fail on retrieving credentials from the jobs would not start at all. And they, with a lot of back and forth, they said there's a line of code in Custodian that is kind of making client connections outside of a thread or inside of a thread. And that is causing a lot of client connections and port usage. And we are running out of available ports on the EC2 instance. I'll go ahead and file an issue.
Yeah, definitely that needs an issue. Wait.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yep.
ports onto the metadata server or ports from the instance?
Ports on the metadata, like we can't make a connection to the metadata server because there are no available ports. I can show you the error real quick if you want.
Yeah, I mean, the metadata server gets DDoS at like 16
Hmm.
requests. Like it's a very low concurrency. Yeah, please follow an issue. Happy
Yep.
to discuss it there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this was brand new. AWS got back, and I think it's related to one of the recent PRs. They said the client connection is getting big. I was suspecting the S3 transfer library, but they said apparently there is a client connection being made inside the thread, which is causing a lot of new client connections to be made versus outside of the thread.
You just said that was specific to ECS, like you weren't seeing that with
That was
VC?
it's specific to ECS in terms of the errors that we are seeing, but apparently we are burning all the available ports on the EC2 instance because the client connection being made to S3 for log shipping is kind of eating up all the available ports.
Okay, sorry, this is different than like. Sorry, what you said at the beginning was okay. So burning all the available ports. There's 65,000 ports.
Yeah, we were
And-
using the
And then you said to S3, and then you said to getting credentials. So I'm just trying to unpack that a little bit more. I mean, if you have issues that you can just put in the detail, like into an issue, like happy to go unwritten async, but like there were 3 different things there, and I wasn't quite sure which one we were talking about by the end.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and drop in an issue and add as much details as.
Sounds good.
So if anybody else sees an issue like this, look for new issues from Patush. Okay. We'll
I
check that
just
one out.
wanted to throw in there. I'm going to see if we can get somebody to pick up the story to add the ability to disable deletion protection on DynamoDB tables.
Oh,
We
nice.
just got dinged with that.
Yeah, I know we just saw, I think we had an issue out there and someone, I just saw a comment on it. Okay.
Yeah, Nitro Code had put one out there, and I just commented on it that he was looking to enable it. We're looking to disable it, but really we want both. So
Yeah.
I'll see if we can get somebody to pick that up.
I can take that
Awesome.
up, David. Is there an
Can you
issue
please?
already? Yeah,
That'd be great. Yeah, there's lots of
Okay.
examples out of RDS. I think of how we want to do it, but it's just not done because it just came out in March, and of
I
course
got it.
audit's already dinging me on it.
But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I saw the one about enabling and I think there was either a question, maybe it was from you or someone else talking about disabling, but you're
Yeah, it
right.
was
Whenever we enable, we set it up as a toggle so people can flip it one way or the other.
Yeah, I can't imagine it'd be just one of those. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Pratish. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Actually, question about that. Would you all want it separate from an action to disable? Would you want that built into like the delete action as a force, similar to the way EC2 works, or not really? Like
I'm
having
not
those separate
sure. I
actions is
mean,
fine.
like in RDS, I think in RDS you can do it with modify DB. I don't know that you can do a force in RDS. I'd probably want to do it similar to RDS, but I don't know for sure. I'll leave that
Okay.
to Pratush to figure that piece out.
Sounds good. All right. Any other topics, issues, or PRs?
I'm still noodling on what Pratish was saying earlier, and I did recently notice that the Boto SDK has a client on the client has a close method.
Yep.
Because I think they're managing a URL-3 pool, and I wonder if that's related. If like it's holding connections open.
Yeah, that's somewhat related. AWS was pointing us to the close method for closing S3
Or
clients.
client.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And
Well,
when you were
yeah.
saying S3, was this specifically for output, like getting a client to write the output? Is that where the S3 piece?
Yes.
It's actually, I don't know that it is specific to S3.
Oh, okay.
Like that may have triggered it, but like the client,
Mhm.
that close thing is all about like the URL connections. Like, but when you create a client, it's using an underlying URL libpref pool of connections to an endpoint. Like S3 may use the pool heavily enough to cause multiple client usage or multiple clients to be open, but each client that you have has got a socket open and up a client socket on a random port open to the endpoint. So
And those are not getting garbage collected when they're not in use.
okay, I can think of something neat we could do for that, but yeah, cool. Or sorry, something neat that we can scope it to the policy execution and just make sure that we close out automatically using our existing session hook integration.
All right, sounds good. Any other topics? I know I'm looking forward to seeing this issue now too. We're kind of doing a lot of like pre-release, like pre-game talking it through. But if
Yeah, it's. I was in the process of filing it, but this morning I saw some new comments from AWS, so I got derailed. But it should be coming out shortly after this call.
Sounds good. Well, if that's it for today, then we can wrap up. Thanks everybody. Thanks for a good discussion, good topics, and thanks to all the contributors who made this release possible.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks all.
Cheers.